Richard James Suits is far more than just a Savile Row tailor. What started in 1992 with a modest £10,000 overdraft has transformed into one of Britain's most influential luxury brands.
We came across this tiny little store with a to-let sign. It's like £15,000 a year. It seemed like a lot. Now it seems like a couple of days now. I think we've broken into about 3 times, 4 times. And God, we might not be selling much, but at least people want to break in and steal it. That's something.
While most people know Richard James for dressing icons like Elton John, Nicole Kidman, Daniel Craig and Oasis.
Doing a fitting on Liam. At the same time, we were doing a fitting on a captain of industry of a massive multinational company at the same time. And then in walked Elton John. We made it was a coat for Sir Alex Ferguson. And that came about because we were doing something with Nike.
What's less understood is how they've managed to survive and thrive over 3 decades in an industry where competitors have fallen out all around them.
And that's what's great about business house. We are fairly unique. We're small, we're unique, we're niche. So it's okay if you're Louis Vuitton. What business you're losing here in London, you're more than making up for in Paris or Milan or wherever.
And you did Noel Gallagher's iconic number 10 suit.
Yeah, I think
as well.
he only wore it when he went to meet Tony Blair.
Are you talking to them for the summer? Not allowed to talk about it, obviously. Sean, tell me about the moment you decided to enter Savile Row with £10,000 in 1992. What was going through your head?
Yeah, probably. 1992 was a time of recession in the UK. There wasn't much going on. It was pretty. It felt quite dire. The full economic story I won't bore you with, but it felt things weren't easy. Myself and Richard had a business before. It hadn't worked out. It was very much more of a fashion business. We'd always worked with Savile Row. We'd always kind of dealt with Savile Row and enjoyed having things made there. More for kind of samples, just to try things out. We had a conversation with some tailors there, and they said, "Oh, why don't you come onto Savile Row and you can do that ready to wear, and we'll do bespoke." And we kind of talked about that. But the people we were talking to, we realised that culturally we were so different. This was just not going to work. And whilst we were on Savile Row, we came across this tiny little store with a to-let sign on it. Why don't we give the landlord or the agent a call and see what's going on there, and call them up, and they said, yeah, we can have it. It's like £15,000 a year. It seemed like a lot, but now it seems like that's a kind of couple of days now. And we said, well, yeah, well, okay, we'll try it. We'll give it a go. We had not much knowledge about how to start up, but we had some enthusiasm. We respected. We knew what Savile Row was about. We loved it, and we thought we could do something different. And so, yeah, with our very limited funds, we took the store over, moved in, tried to put a collection together. We realised it felt like Savile Row was a little bit flat at the time. It has a fantastic heritage, incredible history, but it just felt a little bit flat. And we kind of wanted to bring back some more interest, some more colour. So we kind of went to different mills that made fabrics. We'd go to Scotland, we'd go to Yorkshire, and because things were tough, these mills that normally wouldn't bother with us, they were kind of said, "Oh, okay, well we'll make some small runs of fabric for you, and we'll make them unique." And so we'd have a tweed and put a kind of bright lime green check through it, or a pink check through it, just make it slightly different, and put those in the store and make those, and yeah, we just tried to be a little bit different, and I think because of that, our peers at the time were designer clothing is what it was called. Designer clothes were kind of big, but they kind of, I think there was a gap for men that wanted something that had some of quality and some sort of heritage and some sort of touchstone to heritage, but also a little bit different, a little bit more forward, a little bit more creative, and that's really how we started and created a clothing line around that. We had a very specific kind of audience in mind, kind of creative professionals that would understand what we wanted. But the reality was, it was much broader than that. People from all sorts, all walks of life. At that time, we had there was something called Dress Down Fridays going on, which is. Which I don't know whether you've heard of that now. But
Dressed down every day.
Now it's dressed down.
It does happen to be Friday, and we both look like we've turned up for Dress Down Friday with you. I'm sorry.
So Dress Down Fridays was a big thing. And so all the banks, all the law firms, you could kind of more or less wear what you wanted. So I was answering questions, which I have been basically the whole time. what are you guys doing opening this kind of formal kind of clothing when people are actually the general movement and general direction is a more casual. But actually, what was happening, especially in those banks, and those guys couldn't really do dress down. It was a bit of a disaster, and actually quite a lot of the younger guys, they kind of went the other way, especially in some of the investment banks. We're going to dress up. We want to look completely different. So quite a lot of our clientele, Savile Row traditionally at that time had a much older clientele, probably in 50s, 60s guys. It's much more proper establishment. We suddenly had guys in their kind of 20s coming in and kind of wanting to have a chalk striped suit, but they wanted it to be kind of, orange or just to stand out, and they wanted to look as sharp as possible and look a bit different. And we kind of filled that gap. It was kind of, that's really, I guess, how we got going in that respect.
And so going back to those early days, I read, had a £10,000 overdraft.
Yes, that's how we started.
And that's how you started?
Yeah.
Had your business before that been successful?
No.
And so what sort of financial position were you both in at the time?
We both owned our own properties, and so used those as collateral. So we had personal, guarantees on that, and the bank would lend us against that. It was that basic, yeah.
Wow.
Those numbers seem really small now. They are kind of small now, but then they felt quite big. Felt quite substantial. And I remember thinking, but the business that I'd worked with Richard on before did go into administration and bankruptcy. I remember thinking, God, I just don't want that to happen with this business. I don't want to experience that.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I want to do.
Did you make money quite quickly? Like, how were the early days?
No, we didn't make money at all quickly. So we had this tiny little store on Savile Row, which is probably our changing rooms in the main store are probably bigger than the store then. We filled this store up with, what we thought were really nice clothes and unusual clothes, and opened the doors and just expect people to come flooding in. And no, they didn't. I mean, it was interesting. We actually did have a lot of press. We knew people in the business, and there was a lot of goodwill towards what we were doing. I still think people didn't quite, they weren't quite ready for it. And Savile Row then was quite. We opened on a Saturday, and nothing was open on Saturday. So I'd go in the store and sit there, wait for people to come in. Basically the only people come in was someone looking for change for the parking meters, and that's really what it was like for a while. And we both had to do other things to survive. We didn't earn any money from the business. We couldn't exist just on that because there wasn't anything coming in.
When you go to a landlord with, they're like, there's a space, it's £10,000. Did they not qualify in advance? Are you making a tailoring business here because it's Savile Row?
They didn't actually. It's really very little. There are very little questions were asked. I think that building was probably in a process of was about to be redeveloped, and I think the landlord just think, well, I just fill this space up with these guys, and if they pay the rent, great. If they don't, it's not too much of a big deal. We're going to put it down. But we, obviously we did pay the rent. But then they gave us we were on a 6-month notice period. Anytime they could just say 6 months, you're out. We're going to do it, which did eventually happen. I look back now; it'd be absolutely impossible to do that now. That you'd have to actually go through interviews with the landlords, just tell them what they want to do, what's your marketing ideas, what's your PR ideas, and then also we'll take a year's deposit because we don't know who you are and whether you can survive.
I have to ask because your name's obviously Sean Dixon. You got your co-founder Richard James. Was it roll of the dice? How do you decide whose name goes on? Flip a coin? Tails.
Bugger. I see. Yeah. It was interesting. Richard had a business previously. It felt like let's just maintain that goodwill. I was very much quite happy to be more in the background anyway when we started the business, and I thought, I don't know how long this is going to last, whether we're going to, as I said, I was doing other things, and so it kind of made more sense, and I was quite happy for that to be the case.
Did you have the same skills? You both tailors?
No, neither of us are tailors. I came from much more business background, commercial background. Richard was a designer. He'd worked in some significant stores, around as a buyer. So we kind of we had a different skill set. But we both knew that we liked men's clothing. We wanted to make a difference and try and change things.
So for those that don't know, what's the history and the legacy behind Savile Row?
God, yeah, Savile Row is a really fascinating street. I think totally unique. There's nowhere like it else. Nowhere else like it in the world. It's about almost a 200-year history of suits. I mean, originally, what's quite interesting is actually originally Savile Row was doctors were based in Savile Row.
What was the original Harley Street? Was that
Harley Street had the tailors?
No,
and it swapped.
Oh, wow.
It actually swapped over round about, I can't remember, mid-19th century. I think the first tailors was Henry Paul to move into Savile Row then. So our kind of 30-odd year history is a kind of blink of an eye compared to some of these. So it's got an incredible history, and in the centre of one of the most expensive cities in the world, you have people working and actually making things, sewing things, putting things together. That's kind of unique, and that's probably something that really needs to be preserved and maintained and valued. Because there's not many other, property, land is expensive, and we're in Mayfair, but there are still people making things. So you can walk down Savile Row, you can look downstairs in the basements, and you can see people sewing, putting things together. It's pretty unique.
the authenticity? If you think about how much the ways of working is changing everywhere in every industry and stuff, there aren't many categories where you feel like even in 100 years that would still be perceived as value to the consumer, but you can't imagine that in this space.
I think so. It's one of those. It was one of the things I always talk about. It's like we're kind of an analog business, in a very digital world. It's one of those things that, especially bespoke tailoring, it can't. There's certain things that have basically remained the same for 100 years, and probably will have to remain the same. And I think people respect that things take time, and there's a slowness to it. Everything slows down, and it has to be considered. Maybe there will be some sort of tech innovation that kind of changes bespoke. I'm not sure, but I think our customers specifically quite like that the things slow down, and you kind of enjoy the process, and also it's handmade. There's that, and what you get with handmade is an individualism that you don't get with kind of mass produced factory made garments. I mean, the buttonholes on a bespoke suit actually are kind of look a little bit wonky, but that's part of the charm. That's what you can see. That's how you can spot a Savile Row suit, a bespoke suit. I think that's what's really
Not
special.
the usual selling point. Oh, those wonky buttons.
Yeah.
That's what you're paying for. That's the value.
when I say wonky, it's not just this is
Slightly off centre.
Slightly, just some small, tiny little things that make a difference. It's a bit like the kind of the radiators on a grill on a Rolls Royce. That's apparently each one can be spotted by the person that made it. It's kind of a little bit like that with Savile Row suits.
Yeah, with the Rolls Royce, they draw on the lines and so forth by hand.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
There's the craftsmanship to it. Yeah.
Exactly, and artisanship.
Do I understand that the Japanese word for suit comes from Savile Row?
Yes, that's absolutely right. A two-piece traditional suit is quite often referred to in Japan as saburo. That's what they understand a two-piece suit to be. And that dates back from 150 years. Yeah, so still in Japan people refer to it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So the Japanese particular, is that a particular demographic of customer that you guys notice?
Japan has a fantastic respect for quality and craftsmanship, and that's reflected, I think, in everything they do themselves. A total understanding, wanting to understand how things are put together and trying to make it better. And I think there's a real appreciation for what Savile Row stands for in Japan. I think there's a similar appreciation for tailoring from Naples, that they also like. But I think there's a kind of affiliation with Savile Row and that kind of British look, and they like that style. So yeah, no, absolutely, there really is.
Obviously, one of the main problems with having a physical presence is things like break-ins, and I heard that you've had quite a few.
When we first started the business, in our tiny little store, I think we were broken into about 4 times in the space of 5 or 6 months. And God, we might not be selling much, but at least people want to break in and steal it. That's something. But it was quite
advertising.
Yeah, exactly. It was quite an exhausting process. So you kind of get a call at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. We were, bearing in mind, we were kind of 100 metres from West End Central as well, just down the road. Didn't seem to really prevent people breaking in. But yeah, it was a pretty. We had very limited funds with our £10,000 overdraft, and we'd have to remake stuff. And at the end, we were just emptying the shop every day, every night, and just hope for the best and wouldn't get a call.
So we have a lot of startups, new businesses on this show, and we often talk about how they think about entering the market, how they think about going up against the established companies. So when you started and you were looking at Savile Row, what was it that you were like, we are going to make this so different that people are going to come here? What was your USP? Did you have a business plan?
Right. No, we really didn't have a business plan. It was a kind of let's just do this.
Yeah.
And try and figure it out as we go along. How difficult can it be? It actually was quite difficult. We love men's clothing. We love Savile Row for what it stood for. We just thought there's something we can add to it. We can maybe add something a little bit different and maybe bring a little bit of life and joy and humour into what we were doing. And that was that was the plan. And the other people on Savile Row kind of looked at us and thought, who are these guys? I mean, they're
Chopped up youngsters.
Yeah, they really, I do remember 10 years later we put on the windows for celebrate our 10th anniversary, the kind of comments that we'd accumulated over the years of at least it's not boots or, don't know one end of a needle from another. And I mean, I've got to say our relationship with the rest of Savile Row is really good now. We're considered part of the new establishment. But back then I definitely think it was like, these guys aren't going to be around for 5 minutes.
Was there a bit of a backlash from the tailoring community?
Not a backlash. I think it's just general kind of ambivalence and
ambivalence is that's quite positive from British people.
Well, I guess so. Yes. yeah. I mean, there was the odd person would come and say hello, but otherwise, I think generally ignored and hope that hopefully they'd go away. But I think what we did, without kind of blowing our drum, I think we kind of. We created a kind of modernisation of Savile Row. We kind of, our attitude was much more open, much more democratic. We didn't kind of just expect everyone to have a huge country estate, and work, work in the sea. We were very
medium-sized country estate as well.
Was good, yeah. But most of the people were entrepreneurs, self-made people, and they didn't want to be judged when they went to it was daunting going into some of those places back then. Yeah. Now I think it's not. I think there's much more modern. There's much more modern approach and much more welcoming, and you can have someone who's 80 and has been having bespoke suits made their whole life, or you can have someone who's kind of 23 in the tech business and also wants to have a Savile Row suit made.
Managing international money used to drive me crazy until I found Wise Business, the account for doing business in other currencies. I can hold money in different currencies and only convert when the rates are good. No more rushing to exchange at bad rates or losing money on outrageous fees. And my team handles all the payments themselves. I don't have to micromanage anything. They have their own logins, set their own limits, and I just keep an eye on things from my phone. One simple account lets you pay and get paid in over 40 currencies. There's no hidden fees, no marked up exchange rates, and it connects right to your accounting software. Whether you're paying vendors or suppliers in Europe or you're getting paid from Australia, it's all just easy. And that's what I love about Wise. It just takes this complicated thing and it makes it really simple. Your money's always secure with 24/7 protection, and you can see exactly where everything is in real time. To learn more about how you can use Wise Business to save time, money, and stress, visit wise.com/business.
So you've been through real recession periods, where I think you've said we only sold a couple of ties. Mm-hmm. What were those periods like? I mean, what sort of drop-off in business are we talking about, and how long until it came back?
Well, I think the only couple of ties was when we first started the business. That's probably had about 2.5 years of, wow, this is really slow and this is tough. You just kind of think, God, is this ever going to change? Are we ever going to really get started here. And that was right at the beginning. And then all of a sudden it did change, and it was really hard to put my finger on it. I felt maybe it's one time I remember being in the store. It was a Saturday. I was on my own. It was always on my own. It's either one of us. It's only two of us, so we did everything. So I was on my own on Saturday, and I was sitting around, probably reading the paper or doing, not much else to do, and someone came in. This couple came in, and they were quite glamorous couple. I think he was probably Middle Eastern. I can't remember where she was from. He lived in Switzerland, and I kind of got the feeling he was looking around thinking, what am I doing here? And she was kind of being very enthusiastic and saying, I think you should wear this, and this is great, And they ended up, buying a lot of clothes, out of nothing, and I, didn't know much about them. And I thought, well, okay, if people like this can really understand and want to buy, maybe there's something here. Maybe we can really, really make it work. So that was kind of a turning point. I felt for me that was this kind of turning point.
Because there's obviously a very famous moment where you have Gianni Versace and Elton John come in and clear out the store, and this big moment that if you're in the journey long enough as founders, you often do find that moment. But you've got to be patient and wait for that. Yes. Great moment.
I agree. I think
what was it like before that great moment then? So how much silence are we talking?
A lot of silence. A lot of silence, and a lot of, I don't know what we're doing here. Is this really going to work? I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts with other people, and it is that kind of, you're waiting. There's a combination of you've given everything you can, you've tried as hard as you can, bit of luck, and then just waiting for that moment to happen. And actually, that moment also was a very big moment for us, because that time that Elton John came in, he brought Gianni and Versace. They had their respective partners. They were sizes 38, 40, 42, 44, which is all we had in terms of tailoring the shop. And they basically bought everything. And kind of emptied.
Literally bought everything.
Literally bought everything. Emptied the shop.
Wow.
We didn't have.
How much is that?
That then wasn't an awful lot. I imagine it probably came to about £60,000 in terms of tailoring. Not much left, but we had other stuff left. But it really cleared us out. And having someone, as respected as Gianni Versace was back then, kind of coming and buying clothes, which he actually, I think his next collection was called Savile Row. So he kind of, we inspired that collection, and
how does that happen? How do they find out about you? How do they decide to come in with such conviction to buy so deeply into your store?
Yeah, because this is obviously what, probably 95, 96, something like that. So prior to any sort of social media, we would have press in men's magazines, I think, newspapers, things like that. But I think word of mouth that's what we were relying on. That's a great way of building a solid business. Then, people tell their friends tell, and they come in, and then you have a really solid kind of recommendation basis. Absolutely impossible to do that now. You would not have the time to do that. Your costs are too high. Your rent's too high. All those things. It'd be absolutely impossible to do that now. Back then, we had the time to build on word of mouth, and I think that was a really, really solid basis. So someone mentioned to Elton John, you should go and check out this store, which he did.
Did he literally walk in and say, "I'm having everything," or was he in for hours?
He was in for quite a while, but I think I can't remember how long it was. Probably didn't feel that long. Probably was a bit longer. No, probably an hour and a half, something like that. One of the things about having a retail environment is you want to kind of create an atmosphere where people want to stay. It's still what we want to do now. People spend time in and enjoy and relax in. So I think we had that feeling then. That's what happened.
Who are some of the most interesting people you've made suits for?
I've been really lucky to make suits for all sorts of people and many people. I think I remember we first started, Madonna came into the store and she wanted to buy some clothes. I think it was for her brother. He apparently was the same size as me, so I kind of spent kind of half an hour with Madonna trying suits on. And kind of modelling them for her. and she was saying, no, I don't like that, try this one. And that kind of went on for quite a while. And then I remember people coming in the shop like, what on earth is going on here?
You're getting styled by Madonna.
I tried clothes on for Madonna whilst, in a kind of store. Yeah, those sorts of things happen all the time. We made actually it was a coat for Sir Alex Ferguson, and that came about because we were doing something with Nike. They approached us to do something. We were going to work with them on upscaling a lot of their sportswear. I think that I remember we met someone. This is quite an interesting story on its own. We met someone who was running, I think it was the football section of Nike. These guys all have, tennis, football, golf, and they're all running kind of multi-billion-pound businesses just on their own. And I think one of the guys who was running football, he said his argument was like, we have these fantastic athletes, we dress them, but you kind of go to during the World Cup or turn up at the Holland team's hotel, and they're all sitting around wearing these bright orange polo shirts, which are ill-fitting and don't look that good. Well, have a Nike swoosh on them, but we want to try and improve that. We want to try and can we tailor it? Can we improve that? Can we make the fabric? So anyway, that was a conversation that was ongoing with Nike, and on the back of that, also I think they wanted us to talk to their staff. I remember doing a massive presentation to all their store managers from all around Europe about service. How do you serve people? And I've got to say, they were all fantastic, great guys, young guys, really, really good, and they really were interested in learning, because obviously, selling someone a bespoke suit is a very different to just someone walking in and off the street. And so they kind of wanted, how do you do that? How do you kind of convey that? How do you make people feel really valued? And that was part of our thing. Ultimately, we get to Alex Ferguson. So they said we got. It was a very big game. I think it was against Manchester City. Could you make Alex Ferguson a suit? So we went up to Carrington, I think where the training ground is, and measured him and made him a coat. I think we put a Nike swoosh lining in there or something. And it was great. It was a great thing. Fortunately, they lost that game. And I don't think he ever wore that coat again.
The Oasis moment as well, that feels pretty special, obviously quite relevant for today with their comeback tour. Pretty much the most exciting thing I've got going on in my summer is
Really, are you going to the
Oasis,
okay?
Yeah. So I'd love to know, how did that come about? And they seem such unlikely people for that image, right? And when I really think of them, I think of like Stone Island and some shell suits and that kind of vibe. This is such a juxtaposition, and juxtaposition is obviously one of the most visually stimulating ideas that can actually happen in fashion. So in many ways seems perfect. What was the experience for you?
Yeah, I actually can't even remember how that happened, how they ended up coming in. I've got a feeling it's just wandered in, and that was
Where was the store? I mean, unbelievable. It must have been right in front of people.
Savile Row. No, we were on Savile Row, and it was I guess someone must have said something once again, a word of mouth, and I remember them coming. I remember the whole band coming in after Nebworth to have some suits made, and Liam, Noel, everybody. I mean, they were pretty worse for wear, as you can imagine. But I've got to say, Liam, I think, was definitely the driving force, and he had really great taste and really great style.
Stylish,
yeah, and he knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted to have something made, and he knew exactly what he wanted and how he wanted it to be, and it was, it was fantastic. It was a real pleasure. So we kind of made his suit when he got married to Patsy Kensit, made her suit as well. I think we did the same for Noel when he got married. So yeah, it was an amazing situation, and we kind of probably at that time, I think the business was on such a roll that we kind of didn't take it for granted, but
it was just
happening. Yeah,
and he did Noel Gallagher's iconic number 10 suit.
Yeah, I think
as well.
when he went to meet Tony Blair. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that was.
And so,
Are you talking to them for the summer? Not allowed to talk about it, obviously.
Love to, but I don't know.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Work on it.
so I feel like that might be, you were so busy, so successful, so many incredible people coming in. It almost just felt like that was the norm.
It did actually become like that. You know, I always feel like I'm one of those kind of cab drivers, and you never know who I had in the back of my cab last night. It's that sort of thing. One of the most iconic moments I remember, and I do remember thinking, I'm pinching myself, is we were doing a fitting on Liam, and he was great. He was always quite funny, you know. He was always kind of joking around. At the same time, we were doing a fitting on a captain of industry of a massive multinational company. You know, serious businessman, big name. I can't remember saying his name, but well-known household name. At the same time, and then in walked Elton John as well. So we had these kind of three people,
That's very cool.
completely
At the exact
different,
same time.
at exactly the same time. And I remember thinking, God, how's this going to go? You know, because Liam's not shy.
Yeah.
But actually,
Elton's quite well known for being quite out there.
and he was, you know, he's also not shy, and it just gelled, and it was. And I was standing back, and I said, "Well, there can't be many businesses on the clothing business. We have these three people having very, very different takes and very different styles. Ultimately, having the same thing. It's just their approach and how they put it together and what they, you know, made the difference. You know, we're making a very classic kind of business suit for one person, and you know, they were all more or less the same thing. It's just it's just their attitude they brought with it. It changed it.
What do you think that you're offering at Richard James that was just different to other people on Savile Row, where you would find three types of people like that?
I think probably our approach, number one, our flexibility as well to do things, and you know, I think people wanted to associate with that particular style, and yeah, I think there's the way we did something, you know, in terms of making things was no different to anyone else on Savile Row. You know, we all have to abide by the same process, but yeah, I think it's probably approach as much as anything else, and an openness.
Security compliance is one of those things that can silently derail your business. Not because it's impossible, but because most of us put it off until it becomes urgent. And by then, it's often too late. I want to tell you about Vanta because it fundamentally changed how our company handles compliance. They've built a system that automates preparing for SOC 2 and ISO 27001 certification, turning what used to be months of tedious work into a straightforward process. What makes Vanta different is that they understand this isn't just about checking boxes. It's about building trust with your customers while protecting your business. That's why over 8,000 companies, from two-person startups to major enterprises, rely on their platform. If you're growing your business and you know security compliance is something you need to address, visit vanta.com/secret leaders. They're offering $1,000 off your first year, and honestly, it's worth every penny just for the peace of mind. It's the solution you wish you'd found years ago. Use Vanta so you don't get slowed down by security paperwork and focus on what matters, growing your business. Visit vanta.com/secret leaders now and get $1,000 off your first year. What's the most sort of eccentric suit you've ever made? Like, what's the craziest thing you've ever been commissioned to do?
I never really think anything's that crazy. You know, I think everything's possible and everything's open. I do remember we had one of our clients, kind of older gentleman, very, very wealthy, and he used to have to wear a suit for the opera, and I kind of think he was slightly resented it. So he asked us, could you make me a camouflage suit? You know, out of you know, do a Savile Row suit out of camouflage. And
What, like he's in the army?
an army, basically
Yeah.
an army pattern suit. Yes, the British
Quite
military.
Yeah, that sounds great, to be fair.
Yeah.
Well, that's like a rave.
Yeah. And we did that, and yeah, he looked great, you know. And he said he loved it because it kind of, you know, I guess it's kind of being a disruptor before the word really existed. Then we'd turn up to the opera and have a box and look at and still look really smart, but he was wearing
It's classy and outspoken at the same time.
It's kind of is outspoken. It's challenging.
Is there anyone that you wouldn't make a suit for?
No.
Putin walks in tomorrow.
Okay.
You doing that?
I was like, are you going to?
Well, if he does come in, we have to assume everything's better, and we can. No, yes, that's hard one to say.
Effing terrified turning him away.
I mean, have made suits for people that have turned out to be terrible people in the past, but not at the time, you know. So yeah.
Prince Andrew walks in looking for a suit.
We have made suits for Prince
Oh,
Andrew.
you have? Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I suppose when you first started, were there any like taboos that you made, any rules that you broke that I mean, you said earlier that people gave your store quite funny comments about being new, but was there anything that you were doing seriously against the grain, or rules that you were clearly breaking?
There are lots of rules for men's tailoring, especially on Savile Row. And there's so many. I mean, not supposed to wear brown shoes, suede shoes in the city, all that sort of kind of polar nonsense. I think you have to know the rules to be able to break them. So yeah, there was nothing that we wouldn't consider if it looked good. And if it, if the person that was for was kind of comfortable in that, absolutely, with the rules are there to be broken.
What about partnering with high fashion figures like Christian Lacroix? Like, what does that do for reshaping?
I mean,
the industry?
he came in right at the beginning, charming guy, really, and also was quite at the height of his, recognition and what he was doing And he'd come in and buy jackets, I think tweed jackets from us, and they were, once again, grey or brown or beige, but very strong orange, lilac overchecks. Just he loved the colour. That's what he was all about. And then he'd wear them on kind of the closing of his fashion shows, and you would kind of see him wearing these things. And, it was just really a fantastic, for us, it was kind of almost a vindication that someone with this level of taste and this level of style kind of appreciated what we do. I mean, that was early days, so there weren't many other people, but you don't think, well, God, if he likes it, it must be, we must be able to get out there, reach more people.
Could you give us the sort of scope and the scale of the business today? Like, what has it evolved into?
It's changed quite a lot now. We have 2 stores on Savile Row. One is ready to wear, and one is purely we have a whole building devoted to bespoke and made to measure. We probably have the biggest square footage of anyone else on Savile Row. So going from probably the smallest to the biggest. So that's changed quite a lot.
You should have fucked with Richard and called the bigger one Sean Dixon.
Yeah, we should have done. We'll go back to that. Rename it. And we also have a store in New York now, 57th and Park Avenue, which is a great address. Substantial business overseas. So it has changed. It has changed quite a lot, but I think the ethos of the business still remains the same. We probably could have grown a lot more than we have, but I think we've kind of maintained we've maintained what we wanted to do and keep a certain integrity to the business, and that's been important to us. Could have made a bit more money if we expanded a bit more, but we're happy where we are.
But expansion comes with risks as well. I mean, we talk about it quite a lot on this show, or I suppose more and more, is that by scaling you could have lost the thing that makes it so great.
Correct.
By becoming available, at such a high supply, people would have, maybe lost the love of it.
We just had this conversation, but it's so true, right? When you're creating a high value luxury product, full stop, it's exceptionally hard to get that right. What is the quite right amount of supply and demand where there is, that level of superiority is an important part of that magic.
I totally agree. I mean, I find it astonishing that there's these super luxury brands, and they're kind of available in every airport.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere, but there seems to be an appetite for it. The thing about the thing about what we do, in terms of bespoke tailoring, is we can only make so many suits a year. There's a finite. There's the level of craftsmanship. There's only so many people that can do it, and it's getting harder and harder. I mean, what is great about Savile Row is that, and I think the popularity of kind of tailoring, as it has kind of introduced it to a younger generation, and people, I get a lot of people kind of coming out of college, and instead of wanting to be Alexander McQueen, actually quite interested in coming in to Savile Row and actually learning how to make things, and actually make things from scratch, and that's unique. So that's really helping. But yeah, I think we're kind of limited a little bit by that. We can only make so much.
In so many businesses, the aim will just be scale, and so. For you, what are the metrics that you look at with your business that are, your sort of guiding light?
Well, ready to wear is different. Ready to wear, we can scale up to a point. We have to keep growing. There's no doubt about it. There always has to be growth.
But what is a growth target? Is it 1% or is it 10%?
It's probably between 5 and 10%.
Right. Okay. So it's something meaningful, but nothing crazy because of what we just discussed.
Yeah, correct. You have international licensing now. You said
we do. Yeah, Japan. Yeah, we have Japan. We're always looking at. There's always potentially other international. I think the next probably big market for us will be India.
No, I was going to guess that actually.
Yeah. We see a lot of Indian customers coming through the store. I think India will be the next big market for us.
And so the business is clearly has a growing demand in that, people are almost starting to value it more because it's bespoke. Are you losing much business to Paris, to Milan, to other places? Are you noticing that?
In terms of bespoke, probably not, because there's if you're looking for a Savile Row suit, you have to come to Savile Row and that's it. But in terms of business to Japan, to Milan, Paris, we are in terms of shopping. We have a problem with there used to be a VAT that used to get your VAT back when you shopped here, and that stopped in about, I think, 2020, something like that. I think we're in a huge disadvantage because of that. Yeah. It's something that,
Can you explain that for someone that wouldn't understand that?
Yeah, so as an overseas shopper, you were able to come into the store, buy whatever you wanted, and you fill a form out, and you get the cost of VAT back. Not quite the 20%, because the company that was handling it would take a couple of percentages as a fee, but you kind of get about 16-17% back, which is not insignificant. Now that
those shoppers were buying, I used to work in luxury, and that was a huge thing for the industry.
Absolutely, you thousands of pounds. Yeah. Absolutely. Now you don't get that. But you do get that in other major capital cities. So I think we London, we see a lot of overseas visitors coming here. They love the hotels, the restaurants, the theatre, all those things. Come here for that. Fly off to Paris and do their shopping. Yeah. Go to Milan to do the shopping.
Honestly,
it's a perfect example of a tax incentive sound great to a voting public, but in the cold light reality, they don't work.
Doesn't work.
You get less money from tax.
Cool.
There's less shopping.
There's a body called Walpole.
Yes, I know them. Okay, yeah.
I used to do their marketing,
right?
And I used to do loads of luxury brand marketing. And I remember when that came in, and everyone was like, "You don't understand. This will carve our shopping.
Yeah.
We'll lose massive percents here.
Absolutely, and
because they just won't shop here.
And Walpole represents.
And Americans come to London, stay, and then, like you say, they go on the Eurostar, do their shopping in Paris, and they come back to London.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, and the thing about business like ours is we don't have multi stores. We don't have stores in Paris and Milan, and a lot of Savile Row doesn't. And that's what's great about business house. We are fairly unique. We're small, we're unique, we're niche, but we don't have that representation. So it's okay if you're Louis Vuitton, what business you're losing here in London, you're more than making up for in Paris or Milan or wherever. We don't have that. I do think it's incredibly short-sighted and backward thinking.
Do you think that will change?
There's a very big lobbying. There's a huge amount of lobbying going on. I think the Walpole Group are a part of that, and I've signed up to it. And I don't know if it will. I think it seems to be. Politically it's kind of
ideological, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ideological the optics. Everyone's a bit too scared. Why are we giving rich people more breaks? Money back, but actually it benefits the economy. It benefits the country.
The money just won't be spent here.
It's as simple as that.
It is as simple as that. Like if you're going on a shopping spree and you are high net worth international. You're either doing your shopping here or you're doing it somewhere else.
No, you can save yourself a lot of money. It is that simple. And ironically, this was brought in by a kind of conservative, government, and doesn't really make any sense.
No, it's sort of trying to appease a group of people that aren't even their voter base.
Exactly.
Wow.
What costly mistake do you see luxury brands doing now that you avoided when you were just spending 10, 15k a year?
God, that's a really good question. I don't see many of those luxury brands making too many mistakes anymore. I think there's so much thought goes into what people are doing, and the only mistake I would say is probably making yourself too available and too accessible. Although I guess that's very, very carefully monitored by those brands. That's what they do. They're run by very, very smart people who kind of gauge and have a feel of what's going on. I think one of the mistakes I do see a drive for increasing the margin on goods. So maintaining the retail price but cutting corners on the manufacturing. I think that is a mistake because the consumer eventually notices and feels it. And once you lose that consumer, they don't come back. I've seen that happen a lot.
Yeah, when a consumer realizes that the product quality is not there,
it's going.
You lose them forever.
Yeah,
You
that's
just
the
lose them
antithesis
forever.
of luxury. You
I
don't
think-
get a second chance.
I think men particularly, once they find something they like, they fairly often stick with it. I mean,
Totally.
I'll go in the store and I'll see people that have been coming for 30 years still coming by. You know, they're comfortable, they're happy. So you want to nurture those and look after those people. You don't want to be taking advantage, which is ultimately is what's happening.
I do think as well, like that we were discussing before, I think the problem with luxury now is it's become so successful, so available, so commercialized. So many of those big brands were bought and commercialized, and in many ways, like if you can rock up to any airport or any store or any concession and buy the product, I feel like it just loses a lot of what it was.
Yeah, what's that exclusivity? It's kind of that's what it was.
I mean,
When
Heathrow is basically just like Terminal 5. It's like a luxury shopping centre.
Yeah, it's a shopping mall.
So is everywhere.
Yeah,
It's
everywhere.
like mind-blowing.
Everywhere is, yeah. No, I think when we first started that, that the word exclusive was kind of had something. It meant something. It meant something. And now I just don't. It's everywhere. But somehow it seems to kind of be maintained. I mean, maybe new markets keep coming on board.
I do think that sounds silly, but I do think that a lot of the big luxury brands have been sustained by the massive boom in China of luxury consumers.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
which will be India next, right?
Which will be India next, and other parts of Asia.
Yeah. But I do think in all that pursuit of growth, there will come a time where people are like, it's lost its thing.
I kind of felt that 20 years ago. It seems to still seems to keep going. I mean, that's what that's why when I talk about a bespoke suit from Savile Row, okay, it costs between £5,000 and £6,000. It's a lot of money, but it kind of that whole cliche about it lasting forever and it being made for you, that is really unique. You can spend that much money on an off the peg suit, from a significant Italian brand, but to have a suit that's made for you, that you've had some input in, that you've kind of had some say in, and it's got some of your personality. That's exclusive. That's luxury.
For a young person, or I mean for any person thinking about a custom suit, they're probably looking at £5,000
for bespoke.
For bespoke,
yes.
For the entry point.
Yeah, because we do made to measure, which is slightly different. There's a difference between made to measure and bespoke. A made to measure is made in a factory. A pattern's still created for you, so you have a certain amount of input in terms of style, fabrics, details. But it's not handmade on Savile Row. It's made in a factory.
And what's pricing for that? What are you looking?
About £1,700, £1,800 to start with, which I think is pretty good. And I think if you're young, your body's usually in great shape, and it's relatively easy to make a suit look great. The tailor needs to do less work. Everyone needs to do less work. And I think that's a great starting point. Listen, there's still a lot of money. We're not, I bandy these numbers around as if it's kind of quite, throw away, but it's still significant. But that's a great way of starting.
And so you're moving from made to measure through to bespoke.
You start ready to wear, made to measure, and then bespoke.
And what's your entry point to bespoke in terms of?
Yeah, I think it's about £5,500 for bespoke.
And at the top end, 15.
If depending on the fabrics, basically it just keeps going.
Nylon 15.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're coming in. The floor, I suppose, therefore, for bespoke suit is 5,000, and then anything over and above that comes down to materials, quality, design.
Absolutely. I think there's small details like having a white suit. Say you wanted a white cashmere suit made. There's a cost involved in that because just the handling of that fabric has to be much more careful and every detail. So there's things like that.
The psycho gets that. He's very confident. It's hilarious. You imagine how much you'd have to clean that in a city called the Grey Smoke.
They'd have to make it with gloves.
You basically do.
Yeah.
Have
you made one of those?
We've made white suits for lots of people. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's certain things are made. I have to be put through a machine. You have to take the machine apart before you put anything through that. It has to be cleaned, and so it's a whole different process.
So in this modern world that we're in now, COVID's happened. I think fashion definitely changed. I think that being smart definitely changed a bit. Like, what do you see now as the trend for suits? Like, what do you see the future of suits? I feel like people are becoming smarter again.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think we've definitely noticed a big trend. Smart dressing is now a choice. Well, I think the big difference. I mean, we were always a business that made suits for people that didn't have to wear suits. They chose to. They worked in creative industries. Architects, advertising, whatever, music business, and they chose to wear suits, and that's still the case now. We still make suits where people don't have to wear suits, or tailoring. I think one of the biggest changes is that wearing a suit for a uniform, that's done, because you don't have to wear a suit, full stop. So having to go to the office, you can wear what you like. So if you are going to wear tailoring, quite often now it's more jackets and trousers. I'm wearing a suit now. I like wearing a suit every now and then. It feels great, but you don't have to. One of the biggest changes, I think, the comfort factor, the less structure. That's changed quite a bit. And also, I think, which is great, which really suits us again, is men are a little bit more adventurous in terms of colour and texture. They're open to it. One of our biggest selling suits, grey and navy, always big, always a very popular combination. But I think last winter our biggest selling suit after that was pink needle cord.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. That's now that would have been very, very niche a few years ago. But men were looking to wear colour.
Yeah.
Was that
Peacocking?
Exactly. I think they're more, maybe it's a kind of a younger thing and like you said, I think the whole COVID thing, wearing sweatsuits. Casual.
I just bought myself a green suit recently.
Well, yeah, green is really popular colour.
Which is really popular now. Which almost makes me think I need to go for another colour.
Right, there you go.
But that's it. Like on the sort of wedding circuit, which my wife and I are coming to the end of now, I do feel like all the guys were like
trying a bit harder.
I don't want to wear a grey suit or a navy suit because I probably wear those to work. So what else can I go with? And if you've obviously got a summer wedding, you're going to get some guys going with some pretty bright colours.
Yeah, bright.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, bright blue, lilac linen, something like that.
I've got a dark green suit, which I absolutely love. I've got now light green for a summer wedding.
No, green. It's interesting. Green has become a really popular colour. It really has. Yeah. No, I think that's a big difference. I mean, during COVID, I had so many press requests from people calling up and saying, "What are you going to do now? I mean, it's obviously over. How are you going to pivot? What are you going to pivot towards?" And we kind of felt that would change. As I said, when we started up in 1992, Dress Down Fridays, where I've spent my whole time answering questions saying, why are you starting a business now when the whole movement is completely the opposite?
And you've grown despite it all.
We've kept on growing and opened bigger stores and become an international presence on the back of doing tailoring. But our business is to make tailoring appealing and people want to buy it. So whatever the challenges are, we've still got to make people desire what we're doing, what we produce.
I was going to ask, just because I was reading this morning that the Bond franchise has just been sold to Amazon. Do you see a bump in suits when something like Bond comes out? Because he's so iconic.
It was ironically he'd been wearing kind of Tom Ford, I think, for the last few.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Because I used to work for Aston Martin.
Yeah.
And they did. So much of their marketing was entwined with Bond.
Yes.
And they always said there was a massive bump in
sales.
Really?
Wow.
And so I think he might be wearing Tom Ford, but he's wearing a suit.
Suits, yeah. No, I mean, in all the books, he's wearing Savile Row suits, isn't he? I mean, that's traditionally what he was wearing before. But yeah, I guess, I mean, listen, he always looks good. We've dressed Daniel Craig in the past as a customer, and he looks great in suits. And I always think those suits, they've been, I think when you see Sean Connery, those suits kind of look fairly classic. They don't look, even though 60s or even Roger Moore in the 70s. Well, Roger Moore looks very obviously 70s, but Sean Connery, there's kind of a classicness about them. They were made on Savile Row. Whereas I think now the more recent Bonds, the Daniel Craig, they kind of feel very much of the time, and I think they're going to date. They're very fitted, they're very close fitting, and whereas a Savile Row suit's going to look fairly. You're not going to say, okay, that's the 2020s or the 2019s.
It's probably because Bond went from being like quite well built but slight man to now Bond in the future, like all superheroes.
Yeah, it's worked out.
Everyone's
yes,
so big.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you learn about the difference between how a suit and clothes in general make a man feel? Versus just how they appear.
I think that makes a big difference. I always get told by people they feel much more in control when they're wearing a really well cut suit that's been made for them, and I feel like that myself, so I'm fairly sure that's a common reaction.
I've been intimidating the hell out of both of us.
I go
casual wear.
I did actually think I must look like a punk.
At least I made a little bit of effort to sort of top on here. But...
I just think there's that, say you've got a tricky maitre d' at a restaurant. If you pitch up in a well cut suit, there's definitely you're going to be able to command that situation.
Very true.
Much more.
I'm not a particularly smart dressing person, and I feel like I do get a lot of hassle in nice places,
right?
Not dressing smart.
So
maybe I need to dress smart.
It's power dressing for a reason.
Yeah, there you go. What's the biggest difference nowadays when you look at what you've accomplished with the business versus what you thought you were going to do with the business? Like, has it gone as planned?
I'm quite amazed I'm still involved in the business after all these years. I do really enjoy it. I do like it. I love the people I work with, and I get a lot of pleasure out of it. And how probably I had I think my expectations at the time, at the beginning, were so short-sighted in terms of not short-sighted, just in terms of let's just get through to next week. I really couldn't see much beyond that, or next month. Hand to mouth, just to survive the next month. Call up the bank. Can you please, let this check go through? That sort of thing. It was kind of so kind of. I didn't really have a huge vision back then, and I think either of us did. It was just kind of just survive and. I look back. Maybe there's things we could have changed, and the business could be a lot bigger and have a much bigger international presence. We've done things slightly differently, but on the whole, I'm kind of happy where we are, and I feel very content.
If you were starting all again with same £10,000, what do you think you'd do differently?
It just wouldn't be possible. But what would I do differently? It's such a different environment, I think, Dan. I just think what you have to do now, we'd have to think about all the social media aspects and how we make things. Would we, would people work with us anymore? It'd be such a difficult thing now. I don't envy people that are starting up businesses. I see some of the guys that worked for us in the past, and they go off and do their own thing, and it's impressive, and I think, well, good for you, but it's much harder than it was for us back then in terms of finance.
It's an interesting one, because I think that business technically now is easier to start than it's ever been before, because everything's pre-built, whereas older businesses would have to build everything themselves, do everything themselves, whereas now you sort of start at a higher level, but it does mean that competition is much fiercer.
I think competition is really fierce. I think that's got a lot to do with it. I look around and think there's so many people trying to do.
Everything is commercialized within an inch of its life.
And there's very little. There's very, very little room for kind of failure, for having one failure, let alone two. It's and as I said to you, we had that time, we had that luxury of a bit of time and that word of mouth. It's just impossible now. I just word of mouth, forget it. You got to shout really loud.
Yeah, and in luxury, at the end of the day, your brand is built over decades. So
Exactly.
It's
It's a big difference. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Sean, thank you for coming on Secret Leaders.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.